This is Zdrazil, member of St. Paul Rotary. This is a presentation on domestic violence as a workplace issue. I'm an experienced prosecutor, and my credentials are there. This presentation was also prepared with the assistance of Janice Barker, a prosecutor with the Ramsey County Attorney's Office. We have both specialized in domestic violence prosecution in our professional career.
They're on their way.
Police? Huh?
Leave her alone!
She's my wife and she's coming home with me!
The police are coming. Stop it! I'm all right. Get him out of here. Get him out of here.
Come on.
Get him out of here.
Get your hands off her.
I'm not.
You're coming with me!
Stop! Go!
Domestic violence crosses every socioeconomic status. It does not discriminate on the basis of race, on the basis of sex, on the basis of income, on the basis of location. It is pervasive through all of our society. It is not a one-time occurrence. It is progressive, it is continuing, and it has many forms. It frequently takes at least 7 interventions for somebody to leave a violent situation. That is 7 attempts to leave. The purpose of this presentation is to try and have employers and co-workers assist so that we can reduce that number. The pattern of abuse in domestic violence is complex. It includes verbal abuse, emotional abuse, isolation, intimidation and threats, stalking and surveillance by the abuser of the victim. It includes, more than we would like to think, sexual abuse of the victim, and physical abuse. But as you can see, physical abuse is only one of the spectrum of violence that is inflicted on victims of domestic violence. And important for employers and co-workers is the financial control that abusers exercise over victims. Victims suffer physical injury, which is what we always think of, but there is also depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The abuse they experience is frequently in the form of preventing access to money. The abuser will prevent their access to bank accounts, to paychecks, may control their money. Anything the abuser can do to prevent them from having some ability to live independently, some ability to escape the situation. Employees who are subjected to domestic violence want to work. They want to work because work frequently feels safer than when they are at home. They don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want others to think poorly of them, so they will frequently try and hide the abuse or deny it so that their coworkers and employers don't judge them. They don't want the violence to impact their jobs. They know that that can affect whether or not they'll have a continuing job. And they fear that if their coworkers find out about the violence, they will try and intervene in a way that does not help the situation. The abuser will want to control the person at work because the abuser is frequently threatened by the independence that work gives to the victim. Victoria Reinhardt is currently a Ramsey County Commissioner. But in 1972, she was married to her first husband, and she was divorced in 1985 after suffering 13 years of fairly substantial domestic violence. She does want us to emphasize that her current husband has never been violent to her, that she is now happily married after escaping the domestic violence. But she has also made part of her life's work to speak about domestic violence and about her experience with the hope that it will help other victims.
For people that are talking about and listening to this, the most important thing is to understand what abuse is and that you're not to blame. There's never an excuse for treating somebody abusively. There just isn't. And it is, for me anyhow, the scars. The scars stay with you, and I'm not talking about the physical, although I'm sure for many people there's that reminder, but how you feel about yourself is what really suffers when you're in an abusive situation. The self-esteem issues, you're really controlled by somebody else. And when I think back, I let somebody tell me what time to go to bed. I'm an adult, I'm a mother, and I let somebody else tell me what time I could go to bed, what books I could read, who I could talk to on the phone, because I was afraid. And fear is paralyzing. And that's what domestic violence is about. It's paralyzing.
Survivors of domestic violence, victims, have choices. Frequently, those choices are financial ruin or physical survival. They can stay with the abuser, or they can leave, but if they leave, frequently there's serious economic consequences because the abuser has made them dependent on the abuser, financially dependent on the abuser. And if they have children, that's even worse because the question is, how do I feed my children if I leave? But they shouldn't have to make that decision. The abuser's power over them leads to fear. The victims will not report, and frequently the abuser will undermine their ability to work independently. Or if they do work independently, they will control the finances. But they will frequently, if they think the victim is getting too independent, they'll hide their keys. They'll detain them so they can't get to work. Or they'll take their transportation money. They won't show up if they're supposed to provide child care. And of course, the consequence for an employee who doesn't show up for work on time, who's always late, who maybe doesn't show up at all, is they get fired. And that may be exactly what the abuser wants. The result of the job loss is that they have no income to leave. They cannot live independently. They become further isolated. They don't have that ability to get out and go to work. And they are more and more trapped than they were even before.
1 week before my divorce was final, I was out of a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I really thought about it and waited and said, stay married to a person that's abusive or financial ruin. And I really did view it as those are my two options. And I decided, and what I said at the time was financial ruin, here I come. Because at least I'd be alive. And my children would have a mother.
Victims of domestic violence need things in order to escape from the violence. They need continued employment, but they also need time off to go to court or to a doctor's appointment. They need time off to heal from injuries. They may need time off to meet with advocates or counselors who are helping them to escape the situation. And they probably need more of all of these than would normally be allowed under a company policy.
People knew, but nobody really wanted to talk about it. And I guess that's maybe one of the ways to answer your question is people knew, but they didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't want to talk about it. So the best thing that came out of my employer was not only the resources in my employment there at Ramsey County, but to be able to recognize that it was okay. It was okay for me to talk about it and get the help that I needed.
For Victoria, because people at her work approached her about what they suspected to be the violence, and they had services in Ramsey County that would help her figure out how she could leave, what sort of plan she could have for her safety and for the care of her children. She was able to leave that situation. At the time, she had a high school degree. She went on to get a PhD, to become a successful professional woman, and now to be a county commissioner in Ramsey County. What can the employer do to help in this situation? Well, first of all, you can create a safe environment by recognizing that an employee may experience domestic violence. Just having consciousness that this can happen. 1 out of every 4 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime, and don't forget that men also experience domestic violence. Both from women and men who are in gay relationships may experience domestic violence. So at least be conscious that it exists and that your employees may be experiencing it. You can develop a safety plan within your business. You can allow time for people, for victims of domestic violence, to make those court appearances, to make medical appointments, for treatment, for counseling, and you can help hook them up with advocacy programs that specialize in domestic abuse. Every community in Minnesota and Wisconsin has access to those programs. Victims may not know about it, but employers can find them and notify your employees about what services are available. You can also provide financial support. You know, when a victim leaves an abuser, they may have to make a down payment for a new apartment. They may have to change locks. If the employer isn't going to provide that sort of financial assistance, perhaps you can have a system where you help the employee find those services. Most victims, when they leave, will try and get a protection order, a no-contact order, which would perhaps grant custody of the children to the victim, which would require the abuser to give up their firearms, which would require the abuser to attend counseling. Those are options. They don't occur in every case, but the idea is that this order should assure the safety of the victim. The employer should know about those plans so that if something is being violated, you can assist the employee. You can provide training and educational programs, and again, there are services in every community in Minnesota and Wisconsin that will come in and do this training for you. You don't have to develop the plan yourself. You should provide a safe zone at and around the workplace for the victims, and you should keep updated on programs. Violence is a community issue. It's a community health problem. It's a community business issue because it impacts the day-to-day operations. You have valuable employees that you can keep working for you if you help them deal with the violence they're experiencing outside the workplace. But if you just look at them as a dysfunctional employee and you don't bother to learn why, then you're going to have to hire employees, retrain them, and that provides some discontinuity in your business. So violence can be reduced with the support of the business community. We have online a sample policy that you can look at and see if that's a policy that you want to adopt in your business or if you want to change. Also, Janice and I remain available as resources, and our emails will also be online.